Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, Pete Mezzetti, sitting here with Eric Hammerling from the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Eric, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Pete. Nice to see you.
I know. Good to see you, my friend. It's been a while. It's been a while. Since last time you and I saw each other, what's going on with the Connecticut Forest and Park Association?
Oh boy. Well, obviously right now, what's on everyone's mind is COVID-19.
Yeah.
Today, there is something new happening there. And in fact, we recently made a decision with regard to that, and Trails Day, which is
Okay.
weekend in June, June 6th and 7th.
Right.
And rather than have everyone come out on Trails Day to guided events, and there are over 230 events lined up with event leaders and ready to go, we're actually going to be encouraging people to make it a DIY, a do-it-yourself Trails Day this year.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to make sure that there are video postcards for all of the different events so that people can see what they would have been seeing on June 6th and 7th, but to give them enough information so that they can go on their own and enjoy it and do it safely. So we're hoping that a lot of people are going to take advantage of that. We also have been doing a lot of educational programs, and I guess if there's any advantage to being in our current state of affairs,
Right.
we actually are able to reach many more people through our education programs. So as an example, we have coming up a webinar for how to become a master naturalist. If we had done that as a typical workshop, as we've done in the past, we would get maybe 20 people to come, and it would be great, but we'd always be wondering, well, how could we get more people to participate? Well, now that it's being offered as a webinar through Zoom, we actually have 250 people signed up.
Wow.
250 versus 20. So it really is an incredible opportunity to reach more people. And now, of course, we're thinking about, well, when things hopefully go back to normal at some point, and we are doing workshops in person, well, we should also make sure to have a video connection as well, because then we could really maximize the people who are getting some good, interesting information about the outdoors. So we're trying to turn lemons into lemonade always at CFPA, and those are just a few of the things we've been working a lot on.
So what are some other exciting things that's going on with CFPA?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that we've often talked about parks, but we don't talk enough about forests. And I'm the chair of a subgroup of the Governor's Council on Climate Change, focusing on forests. And we've had 7 meetings. The first one was in person. The rest have been by Zoom. And we've had a lot of terrific presenters participate. And what we're doing is coming up with recommendations for the state on how we can address climate change. And forests, of course, are important that way because as forests grow, they actually take on additional carbon. So if you're trying to keep carbon out of the atmosphere, CO2 out of the atmosphere, one of the best places that you can store it is in trees that are growing. And in Connecticut, we have a lot of trees. We also have a number of urban areas that have trees that are kind of on the brink. They could either be maintained and cultivated for future benefits, or they are potentially threatened with being removed in some areas. And we're, of course, encouraging healthy trees to be maintained, and all the benefits that come with trees in an urban area that you might imagine. For example, very obvious one, trees provide shade. And if you are providing shade, that means you have less of a need for air conditioning. So you have both kind of a double benefit. People are more comfortable, less susceptible to heat-related ailments, and you have people using less energy because they don't have to crank that air conditioning up to 11.
Now, tell us about during the COVID-19.
So Pete, I lost you there. I
Yes,
just,
sir.
the last thing I heard was COVID-19.
Okay. Eric, tell us about COVID-19 and how that affects the closure of the parks.
It's a really big issue because one of the things that we're all hearing about all the time is the need to maintain social distancing. And what that means is you have to be at least 6 feet away from other people. And
Right.
when you have a lot of people going to parks, and it's amazing when a lot of people are at home and looking for things to do, and some of those normal activities like going to a movie theater, going to a sporting event are not options right now. A
Right.
lot of people are going to state parks and to trails, and we see that as a wonderful thing. A lot of people are getting outside, but we want to make sure that people are doing it safely.
Right.
Keep on talking about all of the mental and physical benefits from the outdoors, which are well documented. And we think that it's really critical that people take advantage of that. But one thing that I do to make sure to maintain appropriate social distancing is not only do I go either myself or just with my wife, just people in your household, uh,
Hmm.
but I also bring with me a walking stick that's about 5 feet long. So when I put my arm out to the side, that's 6 feet away.
Right.
And I could really make sure, not that I'm going to use the stick on anyone, but let people know that that is an appropriate distance. Of course, one of the things, if you're walking on a trail, you always want to do is to yield, be really courteous, because when
Yes.
we're coming towards each other, sometimes if the trail is a little bit narrow, you can get a little bit close. So you want to make sure to yield, give people enough space and air to get by, uh,
Hmm.
and try to keep everyone healthy.
Exactly. Now, Eric, let's talk about staying with the COVID-19 theme. Let's talk about how it's affected campgrounds.
Yeah, well, campgrounds normally would be opened or opening by now.
Yeah.
In fact, the last couple of years, the state parks in a few parks like Hammonasset, larger campgrounds, have added a spring camping season. Well, there is no
Right.
spring camping season, and in fact, just over the weekend, the Deep decided to extend the time that they won't be allowing camping in state parks to June 11th. So it's a later starting season, but it's a really difficult issue, as you might imagine. You can see that people staying in individual tents, that no big deal. But
Right.
people typically, when they're camping, will come together for meals or come together to do various activities. So you really want to be careful at every stage. You also have to have some redundancy when you're camping. So normally you might have one person making meals for everybody, and one person serving food for everybody. You actually now have to think about having each person who's in a campground having their own food and their own utensils and their
Right.
own cooking items, because you just don't want to have that cross contamination. So there are a lot of different things that they're thinking about right now. Our organization and a few others have been reached out to kind of say, so what do you think would be the best ways for the state to go about doing this? And we feel like to this point, the governor, the commissioner of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the state parks staff, and the whole crew have been very professional and are really doing everything they can to have places be open and well maintained for people. Campgrounds, they will get there, but not quite there yet.
Exactly. Well, outside COVID-19, what else are you guys up to?
Well, we're really trying to, continue to let people know that there are a lot of things that CFPA is doing, even though our office is closed and all of our staff are working remotely.
Yeah.
We are, all of the Blue Blaze hiking trails are still open. And so we have some staff who are dedicated to working with volunteers to keep places well maintained. We're, of course, not requiring not that we ever do, requiring that volunteers go out to maintain trails if they don't feel safe. But we've
Right.
actually had a lot of volunteers contact us and say, I am going crazy indoors. How can I get out to do something that has a public benefit on the trails? So we're saying, if you want to do that, here are the things to make sure you are safe as you do it. You know, obviously wearing a mask, sterilizing your tools, maintaining safe social distancing, you know, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things that people can do. So we're working with a lot of volunteers there. One thing that I can tell you I'm not doing, Pete, is doing anything to do with the legislature, because they've
Yeah.
been closed. And, you know, that's been unfortunate. There were actually a couple things in this legislative session that were looking somewhat optimistic. For example, you know, we were hoping that the state's trails program would have restored its bonding. It's out
Yeah.
of funding. And we would have hoped that under normal circumstances that would be in place by now. We also were hoping that we might have a new law that would give some incentives to landowners to protect trails on their property. And in fact, that's something that a lot of people don't realize. You know, with the Blue Blaze hiking trails, there are over 825 miles of trails. Almost half of those trails are on private land.
Oh, wow.
Either individuals or land trusts, corporate landowners that have allowed people to have a recreational experience on their property. And we want to make sure that they feel that way far into the future. So we're looking for ways to incentivize landowners to keep those trails connected and on land.
Exactly. Now, you guys also oversee the, what are some of the other programs you guys oversee?
So we have, I mentioned advocacy and outdoor recreation. We have a land conservation program, and
Okay.
we actually have about 2,100 acres of properties that we either monitor or own and maintain actively. And we're trying to make sure that those places also stay open and safe. You know, again, we have staff that are working remotely and aren't able to do some of the things that they normally would do. But we want to make sure that people are at least aware of where those places are. And if people want to volunteer and help out, give them ways to do it.
And if people want more, before we forget, if people want more information on CFPA, where can they go?
Yeah, I would always encourage people to go to our website, which is ctwoodlands.org. Or, of course, anyone can contact me by email at ehammerling@ctwoodlands.org.
And from what I hear, there's a picture in an article about Pete Mezzetti,
Yes,
I think.
we are so fortunate to be an organization that is very much volunteer driven, and we
Hmm.
have this amazing volunteer, Pete Mezzetti, who has really helped with some of our communications work, and it's just a joy, Pete, to work with you, and
It is.
obviously we so much appreciate your bringing your expertise to help us be better.
As a matter of fact, I'm actually working on something for you. So you and I will hopefully be in touch within the next couple of days.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else do we want to tell people? Let's talk about the virtual trails days that are happening.
Sure. So one of the things that's really always great about Trails Day, but it's also
Mhm.
really difficult about Trails Day, is there are so many different things to do. And we hear from people all the time, you know, gosh, 230 events, I can only maybe get to 4 or 5 in a weekend. Isn't there a way that you can stretch them out across, you know, a month, a year?
No,
Well, guess what?
no.
Now, every day is Trails Day, just
There you
like
go.
you know, with Earth Day on April 22nd. People in the conservation community, like our organization, say, well, every day is Earth Day. Well, now every day is Trails Day, because you know, we've got 230 different events that people can do at their own speed, on their own time, and across the year. They also, as I mentioned before, we'll get to see little videos on the different places. So if they're not quite sure what something might look like and want to have a little taste in advance, they now have the ability to do that. So we think that's a really nice service to provide. And we're really always very, very thankful to have so many wonderful event leaders who have been working with us as volunteers in different organizations, municipal and state and local folks who've been doing this, some for 15, 20 years. This is the first time we've ever had something like this. But just like I was mentioning with, having webinars be able to reach many more people, maybe if we add this video element this year and have it in future years as well, that'll also be a way to enrich the experience for people who want to get outdoors and try different things.
Exactly. And obviously, last time you guys were together, we talked about the trails with the brewery project.
Yeah,
obviously that's on hold too.
We've got ales to trails. We've heard brews and views, but we always encourage people, if you're going to mix the brewery and the trails, you do the trail first.
Yes, so you don't get lost.
Don't start at the brewery. That's the way to keep safe and have some fun as well. But we actually have found that there are a lot. I mean, as you know, there are a lot of breweries in Connecticut, a lot of really fun local places. And if you could find a place that is not too far from a trail, it's a great way to have two wonderful experiences in a day.
Absolutely. So how long have you been with CFPA?
I just on May 5th celebrated 12 years with CFPA.
Wow. And last time we were together, you and I interviewed the second segment, and we had somebody else with us on the first segment. How is she?
Yeah, Claire Kane is our Trail Stewardship Director. She is just a wonderful person. We're very lucky to have her. She happened to be the first person that I hired after coming on board at CFPA. We had a couple other folks who were here already, but she has really grown the Trails program. I think it's a very professional outfit. I think they're doing amazing work. And really are the kind of the elite of knowing trails, connecting people to trails, having more technological tools all the time so that people can access trails.
Right.
And really, she is a resource for a lot of people in Connecticut, and we're very fortunate to have Claire on our team.
Absolutely. Now, once everything opens, as far as parks, recreation areas, campgrounds, what type of changes you think people are going to see?
I do think that people are going to be consciously social distancing for quite some time. I think there's just going to be, because this has been a really scary thing. At this point in time, nationally, we're over 80,000 people have died because of this. I mean, this is a pandemic. This is a big deal. And so, I hope people will get back to being able to, hug and those types of things. But I think for a period of time, people are going to really be spacing themselves. I think there will probably be as many outdoor opportunities as possible, because it's just easier to space yourself with others as you do things outdoors. And so things that may have been indoors in the past might be outdoors. I've heard about lots of different celebrations that people are getting very creative with. Heard something on NPR recently that just cracked me up. They're talking about a car mitzvah, where they actually did it in this big field. They kind of celebrated with everyone in their individual car, and they were able to hear a broadcast over the radio. And then at the end, they did a car hora, which is they drove around in circles. It was just
nice.
It was great. So people get creative when we have these kinds of challenges.
Absolutely. So from what I understand is CFPA is celebrating their 125th anniversary this year.
Yeah. Oh my God. I almost forgot.
You said you promised me a party.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's going to have to be a different kind of party this year. Fortunately, the 125th year, I guess, stretches for a little while. And
Right.
because in 1895, we actually were chartered on like December 30th, we feel like we actually have until the end of next year to really put on a proper party for our 125th and also
Hmm.
in the future. So you'll get your party, Pete. You'll get your
I was
party.
going to say we'll party.
Absolutely. We'll
We
find a
will.
way. And I look forward to that as always.
Because I think you and I know how to have a good time when we're together.
Indeed. Indeed.
Most of the time, we know how to have a good time. So, for people that are just joining us, tell us a little bit about CFPA.
Sure. So you mentioned the 125th anniversary of the organization. We're actually the oldest conservation organization, nonprofit conservation organization in Connecticut, established in 1895. And part of the
Okay.
reason that we were established was to try to protect or create this new concept called state forests and then later state parks. At the time that CFPA came into existence, there were no state parks. There were no state forests. It wasn't until 1903 that there was the first state forest. That was in Portland State Forest, now Meshamasik State Forest.
Okay.
And then, in 1913, 1914 was the first state park, and that was at Sherwood Island in Westport.
Sure.
But and actually, because of the first park at Sherwood Island, that's what put park in the name of our organization. We had been the Connecticut Forestry Association. We became
Okay.
the Connecticut Forest and Park Association because we actually fought for about 20 years with folks in Westport who really didn't want there to be a public beach in their community. Amazingly enough, now, of course, we take it all for granted and we see what a great thing it is to have a beach right there. But at the time, it was, thought to be a private place for just some local folks. And we worked with Regional Planning Association, Fairfield County Chamber, and others to make that become a park and actually get funded. And that was how we became the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. And then later on came the Blue Blaze hiking trails. 1929 was when we had that really wonderful concept of, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a state trail system that was maintained by volunteers? So we've had amazing volunteers all around the state helping to take care of these trails and keep them open for everyone, working with our staff, and it's been an absolute joy. So that's a little bit about who we are, just to give you the flavor.
All right. So, if people want more information on CFPA, where can they go and what can they find on the website?
All right, yes, they can go to ctwoodlands.org.
Okay.
And one of the cool things that you can find, and this is in particular now, if you're thinking about going somewhere outdoors and not going to a place that's really crowded,
Yes.
definitely encourage people to use the interactive trails map on our
Okay.
website, which will show you how to drive to any of the trailheads across 825 miles of trail in 96 towns all around the state. And you can find places that are not the typical places where everyone tends to flood on a big, beautiful weekend. So we would encourage people to go to the website, do that, join, volunteer like Pete, and
Exactly.
get involved.
Exactly. Yeah, you definitely want to get involved with CFPA because you guys are a very worthwhile organization.
Thank you, Pete. Really
You
appreciate
guys are
it.
a very worthwhile organization because people asked me, they were like, Pete Mezzetti, you could get involved with any organization you wanted. Why CFPA? And I just tell them they're a very worthwhile organization. I'm a firm believer in the organization.
Oh, you're a good man. And, obviously the fact that you have some history with some state parks
Hmm.
and we've got so many beautiful places in, the Valley Shore Community TV broadcasting area.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is probably Park Central of all of Connecticut. So I'm really proud that you're involved with us, Pete.
Thanks, Eric. On behalf of Eric Hammerling, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks. Good night, and we'll see you next time.